Over the past year, there have been numerous acts of violence committed in the name of the Islamic State. These crimes were immediately classified as terrorism by law enforcement. Yet, acts of violence committed in the name of Christianity, including massacre at a Planned Parenthood clinic, were not classified as terrorism immediately. Does race and religion play a role in how crimes are classified?
I think that they sort of do, but in this specific case of the Planned Parenthood clinic, so one of the biggest defining factors of determining whether a crime is an act of terrorism is whether or not it is used to scare people and to score political gains. So in this case, when the guy went in and he shot up the Planned Parenthood clinic, they weren't sure if he was crazy or whether he was doing it for Christianity. So in this case, they had to find out more details about it before they were able to classify it as terrorism. So that's my idea.
Well, he did say that he was doing it so more babies couldn't be killed. And that definitely is a political motive. He's obviously anti-abortion.
Yeah, but anti-abortion doesn't necessarily mean Christian.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is that terrorism doesn't have to be religious in nature. It can be, just any sort of politics in general. But I think, if you look in the dictionary, it will say that terrorism is an act of violence committed against non-combatants for a political means. But I think the term terrorism in the U.S. media has sort of become Orwellian in the sense that it doesn't have any meaning, and it's employed basically to mean any violent act committed by a Muslim against a non-Muslim. If you want an example of this, let's take the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There's violence on both sides, against both sides, and yet if you take a look at any major newspaper, they're not going to call the Israelis terrorists as well. They're going to call the Palestinians terrorists.
Well, we don't really have Israeli terrorists like we have Palestinian terrorists. You don't have Israelis going across the border and stabbing up Palestinians just about every day, okay? Yes, Palestinians going into Israel and stabbing a bunch of Israelis, okay? You have like terrorist organizations like Hezbollah that are part of the Palestinian side, actual terrorist organizations. And Israel is a country that has really hostile nations all around. No, so I don't think there's a moral equivalency between Israel and the Palestinians.
I'd agree with all that, except for the fact that Israel does go into the West Bank and Gaza and demolishes people's houses.
Well, that's because there's terrorists there.
Well, no, it's because they're building settlements for Israel. And this is an act that's been denounced by nearly every country except the United States.
Yeah, but the problem is that Israel needs these settlements because the last time they gave a large section of land away to the Palestinians, they responded with terrorist attacks. Okay,
well,
so things
let's get back to the question, which was, I definitely think that religion plays a role in how crimes are classified. If you take a look at the Boston Marathon bombing, the younger brother, Dzhokhar, his Muslim convictions were a lot less intense than his brothers, and yet he was portrayed as a terrorist almost instantly, like that. And then if you take a look at the church shooter in South Carolina who shot black people at a church, instantly images surfaced with him and the Confederate flag, and it became clear that this was a political act, a racist act, but a political act. And yet the mainstream media didn't immediately classify it as terrorism, whereas the Tsarnaev brothers were immediately classified as terrorists.
I do agree with Owen on that idea that I think it's probably because with all the history we've had with extremist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, whenever we see a Muslim that goes into some random place and they with a suicide bomb or shoots up some restaurant, we immediately identify it as terrorism because of just the history that we have. And also, I guess, we've also sort of identified that the goal of ISIS is to sort of force their extremist take on the religion onto others. So
Right.
and we instantly associate all Muslims that do that with groups like ISIS, and then if you connect the dots like that, then everything they do is instantly terrorism.
Well, I want to
in that
mention
case.
that you have to remember that people up high, like the Obama administration, they've been dragging their feet and even saying the term radical Islamic terrorism. I don't think Obama even says it. So look at the San Bernardino
He
attack.
doesn't, you're right.
Yeah, look at the San Bernardino attack. In the San Bernardino attack, he tried to cast it as a place of, example of workplace violence, okay? So I don't think there's some major discrimination against Muslims, okay?
Well-
And he tried to, and also, when he won't say radical Islamic terrorism, but he'll tell Christians not to get on their high horse and condemning ISIS, that shows, I think he has some more bias against Christianity than Islam.
Okay. Well, first of all, Obama is a Christian, and
Well, he's not very, I don't think he's a very religious
That's-
Christian. And he
okay,
was,
that's
he
fair.
was raised by Muslims.
Right,
He went to a
but-
Muslim school.
Right. The reason why Obama doesn't classify those things as radical Islam is because he's afraid
but
he's
you're-
afraid of the nationalistic, Islamophobic passion that gets incited
No,
by
but
that.
the thing is that
And-
you're saying that there's a problem of classifying Islamic terrorism as Islamic terrorism, even if you don't know everything, not classifying Christian terrorism.
I'm
as
saying
Christian
there's a
terrorism.
problem with
Though
classifying
there's
one-
obviously Islamic terrorism, and the Obama administration, our government won't even call it Islamic terrorism. So I think that most people are very sensitive towards this, okay? And I think that there is a problem in Islam with jihad, okay?
There definitely is,
Yeah.
but I have a problem. I have a problem with the media instantly classifying any act of violence committed by Muslims towards non-Muslims as terrorism.
Well-
Meanwhile, any act of violence committed by Christians against anybody isn't immediately classified as terrorism, even if it is shown that their motivations were religious in nature.
Well, like Dimitri said, with the Planned Parenthood case, tragic case, and other things like that, it's not, you can't call it terrorism right away. Like, you don't necessarily know if he's a real Christian or something like that. And also, I think a lot of people in the mainstream media kind of want to get after Christianity and say, and I'm actually quite happy to call something Christian terrorism. Like, a lot of people assume the Planned Parenthood situation was Christian terrorism right away, even before the situation was
But
over.
in the New York Times, I remember reading, in various articles, they would mention at the end, they would mention that it's still being debated whether this is terrorism or not.
Yeah.
In the end of the article.
If there's debate going on, that's fine.
But there's no debate going on about whether the Boston Marathon bombing, the younger brother was committing
that was
terrorism.
obviously
Even,
terrorism.
okay, no.
He's bombing
Yes.
a big American staple of is a big Boston race. Okay, it's very very important
But
part of Boston. Okay,
is it
it's a big political statement. You defined it as trying to go after some sort of political goal of terrorism
Or political or
so
religious
there's
goal, yeah.
definitely political motivation at the very
well,
least.
there's political
And-
there's political and religious motivation from the older brother, but the younger brother, there's been some speculation to say that he was sort of influenced by his older brother and sort of fell under his spell almost.
But it's perfectly fine
So
to
that's-
call the marathon bombings Islamic terrorism when one of the two people.
But then you also have to
what's a
call-
radical
you have
Islamic,
to-
and if he's the mastermind, then I think that is really, if he's pushing radical Islamic ideology on his brother, it's still radical Islamic ideology.
Well, I know, but when that happens in the to someone who's white, it's seen as, oh, he's disaffected, oh, he's disillusioned with society, oh,
Well-
he's been isolated.
Well-
It's not a blame on the individual. It's not a
Well-
characterization of the individual. It's, oh, society needs to change.
Well, look at the brothers in the Boston bombing attack. They were pretty normal. I think the younger one, he went to college. A lot of people were extremely surprised that
Exactly.
he did this.
They're-
And look at the Planned Parenthood shooter. He lived in a trailer in the middle of nowhere. He say he's a devout Christian, but lived really sinfully. He'd beat a woman. He'd get into he had children out of his relationship. Okay, and he looked a little bit like Santa Claus. He's kind of he was definitely he seems a lot more mentally ill than someone who you out the Boston bombing attack or San
you don't
Bernardino.
think that they're mentally ill?
Oh, I think they're mentally ill, but I think that it's more. I think that you can definitely make the case for disillusionment with the Planned Parenthood shooter more so than you can with the Boston bombers or San Bernardino. I think there's definitely more than disillusionment in play in those cases. Later too.